A person who is in a high position for a long time tends to care about the thoughts people around him have towards them. And so, the person spares no cost in building a good public image. Mu-young wanted the Trial of Swords to continuously open and made a plan for that to happen. It was rumors. Did you hear? Ed Ranger was involved with Alexandro's disappearance. Ed Ranger was? I heard it was Lennon. Amanda said that he was communicating with the Forest of Death. Really? With that damned place. Malicious rumors. However, would there only be malice in the rumors? They were all stories with the truth as a basis. They weren't all 100% correct, but the rumors would make those who knew about the truth be bothered by them. It was already a situation where the Sun Guild was in the public eye. The rumors spread like wildfire. Of course, the ones involved with the rumors completely denied it. This is all a lie. What reason would I have to communicate with the Forest of Death? I will find the person who spread these false rumors and punish him severely. Everyone besides Hyacinth was pressed by this matter. In a situation like this, these rumors would only give hostile organizations a cause to act. Even if the Sun Guild was the strongest organization, there were still a few who weren't far after them. As if it was a good thing, there were a lot of places wanting a piece of the Sun Guild. And within that situation, Hyacinth started to act. Hyacinth was the only girl who went well with the description high integrity. Only Hyacinth was innocent of all the dirty rumors. In reality, this was also true. It was the reason why Hyacinth was the only one who could act when everyone else was being cautious. A few days ago there were assassins who attacked me. They were the assassins from the Forest of Death. Second oldest sister, did you really want to kill me that badly? Hyacinth started to counterattack. The woman who Hyacinth called as her second oldest sister became as pale as death. This is a misunderstanding. You know very well that someone spread false rumors about me. Would it only be a rumor? But what about the evidence? The items found on the assassins who attacked me. It was a ring. An expensive and rare item made from diamonds. The design of the ring was unique, and it was a treasure amongst treasure made by a dwarf. All the brothers and sisters knew that this ring belonged to the sister. How did that? Are you still going to deny it? It's not me. I don't know why you have that ring, but it doesn't make sense for me to associate with the Forest of Death. In reality, the ring was provided by Mu-young. But it was true that the woman was communicating with the Forest of Death. No, when you think about it, all of the executives of the Sun Guild had some sort of connection with the Forest of Death in one way or another. How were they going to prove it? The woman didn't try to kill Hyacinth through the Forest of Death. She only tried to kill Mu-young, but if Mu-young was killed, it was basically killing Hyacinth. Hyacinth spoke with a serious look on her face. Sister, I request the Trial of Swords. Let's decide who's right or wrong there. Are you crazy? Do you think you would be safe after speaking like that? I'll see you in after a week. Hyacinth safely left her as she ignored the malice and swearing behind her. Tiver. After she disappeared from the woman's sight, Hyacinth shivered her shoulders. Mu-young cautiously placed his hand on her shoulder. You did well. I felt a slight chill. I'm not scared. I know. Even if this tough appearance was just a mask, now was the time she needed to wear it. The trial opened, and the one chosen to be Mu-young's opponent was Lucas, the champion of reversal. He was someone who enjoyed throwing his spear but was a veteran who wasn't weak in close combat either. The Sage's Workshop released a book called The Strongest 300 every year, which listed the top 300 humans they ranked, and Lucas was exactly at the 277th rank. It was a rank that the ones called the Sages created by gathering together and discussing with each other. Although the ranking was renewed every year, Lucas was within the top 300 for a very long time. It meant he was that strong. He was a level higher than Bastille, the last opponent Mu-young faced. Like last time, everyone thought Lucas would win. Slam. But it was a shame that the person who just flew off was not Mu-young but Lucas. Mu-young raised his fist after confirming that Lucas who just smacked against the wall, had fainted. It was a sign of victory. However, the battleground was still quiet. Muyang had even won against a true strong man, who was ranked 277th. Was he really a prestige knight? Although Lucas, who was called the champion of reversal, was winning at first, he lost by a close call. Everyone knew that Lucas was more favorable until the halfway mark. This is the limit without using acceleration. Muyang wasn't uninjured. However, he didn't try to read the grains or accelerate time. He won against Bastille and Lucas just using his pure fighting skills. This is a lie. This can't be possible. The defeated sister cried out loud. She didn't want to believe in the results of the trial. However, it already happened and the sister lost everything. Hyacinth quietly shuddered. However, she didn't forget her duty. To stare at others provocatively. To give others the feeling that they are the next target. That was what Hyacinth needed to do. The expressions of her other brothers and sisters also changed as if they each eaten a bug. Among them, there would be someone who might challenge her next by seeing Muyang's injuries. I'll slaughter you all. Muyang inwardly laughed. The Sun Guild. This place was an impregnable fortress when Alexandro stood by. There was no way it could be swayed just because of Muyang's meddling. However, the Sun Guild without Alexandro was like a hollow fortress. Swoosh. A red Jiangshi body crumbled. As Bei Sungmin spread his arms out, a black ring popped out and tied up the surrounding red Jiangshi. The red Jiangshi was a level lower than black Jiangshi, and even though their numbers were great, they couldn't do anything against Bei Sungmin, who was an arc lich. Who are you guys? Who are you to disturb our work? Taken interrogated the Jiangshi sorcerer. However, there was no way for him to willingly give them a reply. I'll find out after I kill you then. Taken announced his death. Within a short period of time, the Jiangshi sorcerer's whole body was slashed before he even noticed. His body was slashed into dozens, then into hundreds of pieces. After wiping out all of the enemy, Bei Sungmin spoke while he watched the display of skill. Your swordsmanship took a major step forward. This is nothing compared to what I want to achieve. By the way, from what I heard, you originally agreed to leave. Why aren't you leaving? Taken sheathed his sword and stared at Sungmin threateningly. At first I was going to leave. Muyang, he was originally much weaker than me and I took pity on him while being thankful for being freed. But now, I was instantly left behind. Even more, the guy learned extraordinary skills. I can't leave even if I want to until I make those skills my own. Taken grounded his teeth. Muyang, his strength, had become Taken's weakness. He was going to leave without any lingering attachment once he learned and made the skill to manage time and the skill to see grains his own. But it was impossible for him to learn those two skills no matter how much he tried. Just that in the process his swordsmanship had improved. It's a knight's sorrow. Bei Sungmin uttered a short phrase. As he wasn't a knight, he wasn't able to fully understand Taken's feelings. Besides that, let's hurry. We need to find out the next location before the mark disappears. As if it was useless, Taken shook his head and searched the Jiangshi sorcerer's body. Their enemies' bodies each had a different mark, and if they were to interpret it, they would be able to find out their next destination. However, they couldn't just scan the whole picture. The command clan strictly moved in cells. After confirming the mark on the Jiangshi sorcerer's body, Bei Sungmin nodded his head. Next is the Sky Library. 6. It was the number of seals Hyacinth had collected. It wasn't a majority, but 6 seals was enough power to sway everyone's opinions. It was because the ones who thought Muyang had reached his limit and moved to open the Trial of Swords had all lost. By now they couldn't help but realize that something was off. During his last fight, Muyang had used 4 times acceleration, and the siblings still left realized that Muyang's strength wasn't shown in its entirety. Afterwards they spared themselves from opening the Trial of Swords. Either way, with 6 seals, it became possible to even enter the hidden room. Normally this place is only accessible by the guild master. The information collected from the Special Intelligence branch of the Guild is all placed here. Hyacinth spoke tensely. Underneath the Guild. The place they reached after gaining access past the numerous security and obtaining certification. In front of Muyang's eyes, dozens of documents flew around. They were connected to pipe-like structures, and even now documents that were heavily secured moved around continuously. It's here. The place Muyang wanted to enter so much. The place where all manner of information was contained. As Muyang returned from the future, his memory was imperfect. It was because Muyang wasn't active during this period. It was around the time he first came out into the world after being kidnapped by the Forest of Death and spending 10 years in training. He only had information right before the start of the Great Calamity, and any other information was only from looking at people's status viewer histories. I will be able to figure out the exact whereabouts of Alexandro. The Sun Guild had an uncountable number of intelligence branches. Every branch was independent and neutral, and each had a different authority. Only the guild master, Alexandro, was able to make them act. Muyang, please, take this. Hyacinth cautiously handed an earring. Muyang couldn't help but be surprised as he looked down on it. Was this in the Sun Guild? As he concentrated on the earring, information regarding it popped up. Name: Conqueror's Earring. Rank: A++. Classification: Equipable Type. Endurance: 55,000. Effect: A necessity for a conqueror. Asterisk: only equipable when pure intelligence and wisdom stats are above 400. Asterisk: the higher the number of territories conquered or the level of territories, the recovery ability increases. Plus 177%. Asterisk: intelligence plus 20. Asterisk: wisdom plus 20. When worn with contempt for the weak, magic resistance plus 50, and wilderness skill is usable. I found it by chance when I looked around the A-rank storage room. The ring you are wearing is contempt for the weak, right? Don't get me wrong. I can see information as a picture. Hyacinth cautiously spoke. She meant that she brought it after confirming how the contempt for the weak ring looked like through a picture, and because it was the same thing as the one Muyang wore. However, it wouldn't have been simply by chance. The storage rooms the Sun Guild possessed were all massive. It was no different for the A-rank storage room. All A-rank equipment were within the same storage room, even though not all A-rank equipment was outstanding. She would have spent days and nights looking for equipment that would help Muyang. The dark bags under her eyes told the truth. Thank you. It would have taken a long time if he was to try and look for it on his own. As he wore the earring, he felt that his body became a bit sturdier. You have worn contempt for the weak, and Conqueror's Earring. Set effect has been activated. The wilderness is a reality marble that doesn't have a rank. A reality marble. It meant that it was a unique type that was matched to Muyang. A reality marble had the power to reverse any situation depending on how it was used. An unexpected gain. After placing his hand on Hyacinth's head for a moment, Muyang continued to look for documents. He looked through the mountain of papers for a quarter of a day. And he found out about an unexpected truth. I didn't think I'd find this here. Muyang's gaze became deeper. Taken and Bei Sungmin went up the Sky Library. It was easy to avoid everyone's attention. However, the person Bei Sungmin and Taken met was enough to completely outrun their expectations. I can feel Azura's energy. Are you guys Azura's underlings? Ding ding ding. A man appeared as he played the lute. He wore a turban and gave off an uncommon vibe. It seems like you guys were the ones who disturbed our great work. Ho ho. His face was young, but his voice and his tone were no different than an elderly man. As the man played the lute, the surrounding environment changed and a barrier was created. A reality marble. Bei Sungmin spoke as if the man got him. Even Bei Sungmin didn't think he would be able to make a barrier so quickly. Who are you? Taken asked. He wasn't able to get the gist of this strange energy. It was an energy Taken felt for the first time. The surrounding world slowly changed into the man's color. Then the man who held the lute spoke as he smiled. I am Moon, the sect leader of the Sky Devil Church and the successor of Makura, one of the 8 Deva guardians of Buddhism. Myung left the storage room after looking around a bit more. Alexandro. I now know why you disappeared. It was the story about the Command Clan and the Sun Guild. However, the story went a bit differently than how Myung had remembered. The incident in which the Command Clan tried to infiltrate the great city failed originally. The incident ended quietly because the Command Clan was counterattacked before they could even fully start. All of the clans and guilds gathered their strength and drove them out. However, this time they weren't able to gather their strength. They weren't able to manage it beforehand. As a result, the Command Clan was able to infiltrate deep into parts of the great city. There is no greater butterfly effect than this. If the Sun Guild was the center of the 9 great guilds, the Lawless Clan was the center of the 5 great clans. But the Lawless Clan was in a situation where they couldn't act easily. They were quite weakened because of the ancient spirit, the disordered terror. Because the Lawless Clan couldn't use their strength, the other clans cautiously studied the situation. They seemed like they weren't planning to become enemies with the Command Clan. A divided power was easy to penetrate through. Alexandro had realized this truth beforehand. There was no way for that snake-like bastard to just go into hiding for no reason. Alexandro is moving with the most valuable treasure within the Sun Guild, the Sun Mirror, to stop the Command Clan's ultimate goal and to take their power entirely. In other words, Alexandro hid himself to engross everything. What was it about for him to even hide himself? It meant that the Command Clan had something that even the one who reigned as the king of the great city wanted badly. And now Myung knew what that was. Swoosh. Myung's hand touched anguish. The problem wasn't the Sun Guild. The sect leader of Sky Devil Church and the successor of Makura, one of the 8 Deva guardians of Buddhism. He was the mastermind. Even the Command Clan was just a chess piece controlled by him. I thought I heard a lot about it from somewhere. Sky Devil Church. There wasn't a group like that in the underworld. Well, used to not be one. However, it appeared all of a sudden. It was after the Great Calamity. They built a huge castle and lured people to become a place greater than the holy city Mulan. Then a cult judge who took 2,000 soldiers to Sky Devil Church was killed and a huge battle called the Holy War erupted. However, they were unable to come to a conclusion easily. Even when 50,000 crusaders and 100,000 priests joined forces. For a newly created cult, the Sky Devil Church was extremely strong. And the one behind this strength. He raised devils. He was a devil. The cult leader Moon knew how to control devils. At one point in time, there were even rumors of him being a demon king, but in fact he was half human. Another transcendental being with the blood mixed in. The holy city Mulan won in the end, but due to this, they weren't able to exhibit their great strength when the demon kings and demon gods invaded. And so Myung needed to catch him now. If Myung lost him now, he wouldn't be able to take back the 10 years he would lose due to him, and Moon would deal a great blow, weakening humanity's strength after the Great Calamity. Myung's gaze became much sharper. Moon, the cult leader of Sky Devil Church, was after one thing. Sky Devil. The devils of the sky. The source of evil. Wasn't it said that if you gather the 8 Deva guardians of Buddhism that Buddha would descend? That Buddha would descend and save humanity. There was such classified information. The Sky Devil was a similar context. From the sky, a true devil will descend and save humanity. However, the method of saving was different, as the Sky Devil saved humanity by slaughtering. That man is trying to sacrifice the great city to descend the Sky Devil. Making those trials in all kinds of dungeons was just practice. He was currently trying to create the Sky Devil's trial. If it gets created, Myung couldn't be certain of the results, but it would be a catastrophe large enough to wipe out the great city. No one would be able to stop him. If my memory is correct, Alexandro can't stop him. Moon was a transcendental being. He was human but also not human. Even if Alexandro was within the top 10 humans, he couldn't win against Moon. He could try to take one shot to win with the Sun Mirror, but from what Mu-young remembered, Moon didn't have any flaws. He was someone who couldn't be assassinated. Of course, Mu-young understood Alexandro's intentions. If he was to vacate the Sun Guild, the Command Clan would run wilder and Moon, the one behind it all, would show himself. Alexandro was correct up to that point, but he misjudged as he didn't verify how strong his opponent was. Mu-young knew because of his memories, but truthfully, there was no way for Alexandro to find out. I guess I need to stop him. Only Mu-young perceived the situation correctly. However, if Moon was left alone like this, even Mu-young would be swept away by him. Mu-young refused to be in that sort of situation. He was going to kill Moon, the cult leader of Sky Devil Church, and keep his promise with Azura. And after finding out what Alexandro was really after, Mu-young was going to snatch it from him. It would be enough if Mu-young completed these two things. A barrier was used to block someone from entering, and a reality marble blocked the world from entering. It allowed the user to fill the space with their own color and suffocate their opponent. You're amazing. It's a shame you guys are Azura's underlings. Moon was relaxed. On the other hand, Bae Sung-min and Taken became total wrecks. Their bodies were burned all over and their joints were dislocated. They were only able to fight continuously up until now because their skills greatly improved while they were with Mu-young. It was true. Their skills did improve. However, it wasn't enough to kill Moon, that monster, whose life is more of a waste. Taken held his sword properly. Within the barrier it was crawling with devils. Like a flock of bats, there seemed to be at least a few thousand. The devil's Moon had raised within his reality marble. No matter how many they killed, there was no end. Because of this, they couldn't even reach him. If you really calculate it, I think it's more of a waste for the Lich to die. Queequeequay. Your eyes must be skewed. You will be sorry if you look down on the evil spirit predator Taken. It's sad to kill you guys both. What do you guys think about becoming my underlings by accepting my right? Right. The blessing of the Sky Devil. You will forget all your worries and your sorrows. Being invited to true paradise. I'll grant you a greater happiness. It was no different than a pseudo-religion. On the outside it seems the same as any religion, but the roots were very different. The right he talked about probably meant brainwashing. Do you think I'll be brainwashed by someone like you? The evil spirit predator Taken. He was the terror and king of evil spirits and had devoured numerous evil spirits. Although his strength did decrease quite a bit by coming to this world, his will didn't die off with it. Turn his back because he was going to lose? Well, Taken didn't really have any promises to keep with Mu-young, since Mu-young only bossed him around. However, Mu-young was the successor of Azura. Azura, the king of all monsters. A true sovereign that couldn't be compared to a king of evil spirits. Since Mu-young was Azura's successor, there was a need to remain a bit loyal. Lich, do you think the same as the spirit? Bae Sung-min didn't answer. He tried to find out this barrier's structure and a way to get out. Bae Sung-min acted as the disordered terror and wore his soul. The disordered terror was an ancient spirit. It was a monster that even reached the state of a half-god by absorbing a world tree. Of course, the universe that is engraved on its soul transcended normal perception. Just Sung-min didn't use it much because it placed pressure on his brain. But it was different now. 2 is impossible. He had found out about the structure and was able to read the weak point to the barrier. There was a weak point. However, both couldn't escape. Bae Sung-min looked at Taken. Just by exchanging gazes, Taken understood Bae Sung-min's intentions. That's unfortunate. Moon worked the devils as he smacked his lips. Taken spoke to Sung-min quietly. Tell him, although the time we spent together was short, that it was fun. Things he couldn't experience while trapped in Azura's path. They were adventure and excitement. By following Mu-young's path, he even felt shudders and at times he was even envious. Envious of Mu-young, who was getting stronger each day. It was nice to be able to experience this world, if only for a short while. As expected, it was more fun to be with the living than the dead. I'll make you realize why I am called the king of evil spirits. He was incomparable to the past when he completely lost against the Sword Bone trio. He was that much stronger. He absorbed each of their skills and made them his own. Seemed like he could have a good fight now if he was to fight against Sword One again. Myung. It's a bit of a shame I wasn't able to fight with him. It wasn't like he didn't have regrets. However, they were all stories of the past. I understand. Bae Sungmin nodded his head. Then Taken went first and opened the way. Come at me. You scumbags. But their signals were disconnected. Bae Sungmin and Taken. They were attacked? Myung's expression instantly hardened. Someone who could win against those two. It was extremely rare even if they were in the command clan. The best Hyungbish. However, it would still be impossible for Hyungbish to fight and kill them both. Bae Sungmin and Taken's visions weren't accessible. It was strange. When an undead dies, what they last experienced before their death normally becomes visible to Myung. This was one of the Death Lord's authorities. However, no images entered Myung's head. He just felt the disconnection from the two. Someone who can offset an authority. Furthermore, if it's the Death Lord's authority, it could only be a transcendental being. Among the humans, there was currently no one who was close to becoming a transcendental being. But there was someone who he was suspicious about. Moon. He was a transcendental being when he first appeared 10 years in the future. Of course, he would be in a similar state or slightly weaker right now. Ground. Myung ground his teeth. It was a costly mistake to lose Bae Sungmin and Taken. However, he couldn't just stay put. I'm certain that they were heading towards the Sky Library. But he was still able to know where they were headed. The connection lasted until there. However, if they camped at the Sky Library, it was impossible for him to go up there alone. Abdulon. That's why Myung returned to the Sun Guild and went to Abdulon with Hyacinth. Abdulon was the vice guild master of the Sun Guild. There wasn't anyone even protecting his room. It was because his hands and feet were tied due to Hyacinth's brothers and sisters. You are Myung, and Hyacinth? Abdulon lowered his head as he wore a white gown. Myung spoke instead of Hyacinth. Right now, the great city is in grave danger. You are already familiar with the invasion of the Command Clan, right? Abdulon's face hardened. He was curious as to why Myung spoke casually to him and how he even knew about the Command Clan. If Myung came to him with knowledge, there was no point in lying. If I do know, I have found the Command Clan's base. Is that true? It's the Sky Library. However, we can't just solve the problem on our own. We need to use all the military strength of the Sun Guild. I have no powers to do so. You have the authority, though. Do you think the world revolves around a cause with just authority? Myung shook his head. Then Hyacinth came forward. I'll help. The strength of 6 seals should be enough. Abdulon let out a small sigh as he looked at Hyacinth. Hyacinth, you need the majority. You need at least 8 seals to place strength on my authority and the cause. We are short on 2. I understand. I'll gather it quickly. Hyacinth. How can you? I have realized something. That you can never pretend to be weak. Watch me. Hyacinth turned her body right away. As if it wasn't hard to collect 2 more seals. After watching Hyacinth's change, Myung inwardly admired her. She is growing. The weak girl in the past was slowly becoming an adult. This also could be considered as a development. Bae Sungmin opened his eyes. He had lost consciousness for a while as he used all his holy and magical powers to rip through the reality marble. My phylactery is badly damaged. Bae Sungmin looked at his body coldly. Due to the Lich's characteristic, Bae Sungmin's body was immortal. But if his phylactery located near his heart was destroyed, even Bae Sungmin would die. Right now, that phylactery was damaged and he was unable to properly recover from the injuries on his body. The problem was that the phylactery didn't recover naturally. He needed to devour something that had either the darkness or light attributes. or return to Myung's side to fully recover. This is. He looked around. It was all wasteland. I bounced out. It seemed like he was bounced off due to a strong repelling power when he escaped the barrier. As he was unable to see the great city, it seemed like he was quite far away. Also, he felt a strange gap in time. How long has it been? He couldn't tell. He stood up as he placed his hand on the ground. I need to let him know. The sect leader of Sky Devil Church and the successor of Makura, one of the 8 Deva guardians of Buddhism. He was strong. He had strength that surpassed everything. What's more, he raised devils within his reality marble. If Myung was to face him like this, his winning rate would be 0%. However, Bae Sungmin saw it. He saw that Moon wasn't perfect. He needed to tell this truth to Myung. Just by letting him know, his winning rate would increase, even if by a single digit. I thought I saw something flying in, but it was a lich? Is it really a lich? He looks like a human. Am I ever wrong? Either way, let's get prepared. I think he lost a lot of strength. A lich's phylactery is worth a lot. He heard the voices of people nearby. They were 6 in number. It was a team with a balance of offense and defense. An arrow flew in, piercing into Bae Sungmin's shoulder. Explosion. Blaze. As the arrow exploded, the cut dug in. The thin membrane of skin that covered his body was gone, exposing the bone underneath, the force of the blast causing Bae Sungmin to stumble. Look, he really is weak. But he's still a lich. We need to hunt carefully. You're frustrating. What if others come because we're taking too long? It won't be just us who saw it flying this way. Is the rule that the person who kills it gets half still a thing? A young man approached them as he whistled excitedly. He was trying to get Bae Sungmin's phylactery after killing him. With my current magical powers, using low-level magic once would be my limit. What should he use to overcome this situation? Creating a flame mine to explode around his surroundings, 3% chance of running away safely. Creating fog and making them wander around, 5%. Using the inherent skill of the Azure King's left arm, which he received from Myung, 9%. From what Bae Sungmin judged, there was no way to even reach a 10% success rate. Haha, what luck is this? The young man came close before he knew it, and was about to swing his sword through Bae Sungmin's throat. Right then. Stop. A man who wore a shield on his back appeared. Then the young man made a face. Who are you now? Get lost. We already called dibs on him. The man didn't care if he cursed or not, he just looked at Bae Sungmin. At the same time, the man's eyes opened greatly. Sungmin, mister. Bae Sungmin looked at the man. He seemed familiar, but he had no recollection of him. It was because when he turned into an undead, not every memory was inherited. Some memories of recent years were completely gone. The man Kim Tae-hwan took out his shield. If you leave quietly, I won't do anything. However, if you continue to intimidate that man, I will have to show force. Bullshit. What a shitty show-off. The young man clicked his tongue, and when he was about to cut him with his sword, the shield flew and smacked the young man's body. Cough. Although he didn't receive an attack that was enough to kill him, he became unconscious right away. But, as an arrow flew in, Kim Tae-hwan grabbed the arrow and snapped it. Afterwards, the shield automatically returned to Tae-hwan's hand, and the fight began. Bae Sungmin just looked at the scene. A great master of shieldsmanship. Just with his shield, he overwhelmed the party. Of course, compared to Myung or Taken, he lacked quite a bit, but the longer he watched the man, he had a weird feeling. Even though he should be someone whose feelings and emotions should have almost all been erased. Who is he? His feelings were very complex. After instantly winning against the 5, Kim Tae-hwan approached Bae Sungmin. Are you okay? Hugh, how did you end up like this? Who are you? Did you forget? I'm Tae-hwan. Kim Tae-hwan. Kim Tae-hwan? He still could remember him. As Sungmin didn't reply, Tae-hwan continued to talk. It has been already 1 year since you left to find your daughter. And here a meeting after that year. Did you make any progress? You met me 1 year ago. I left to find my daughter. Bae Sungmin's voice slowly shook. Sungmin wasn't a normal undead. He was an undead born of hope and authority. He forgot something important and tried his best to remember it. But he found a clue in an unexpected place. On the other hand, Taehwan realized that something was wrong with Sungmin. Mister, could you have lost your memory? Oh wait. Your body is also. Taehwan's eyes widened as he was looking at Sungmin's injuries. His blood wasn't red. His blood was black. Not just that, but it felt like there was quite a stink to it. Taehwan was unable to hear Sungmin's heart beating. As he quickly placed his hand on Sungmin's skin, he found it as cold as ice. He isn't human. That's when he realized. That Bae Sungmin wasn't human. An undead. Something like a zombie. He remembered overhearing the conversation the ones who he beat against say the word, lich. For him to be a lich. How? Sheet. Who is it? Who made you into an undead? Give me the specifics. About who I am and what I'm looking for. However, Taehwan realized that he was a bit different than a normal undead. Normal undead didn't try to have a conversation with humans, opting to attack them instead. Additionally, they weren't curious about their past. Taehwan thought that there might be a chance Sungmin could turn back into a human. First, let's leave this place. People will be coming here soon. Taehwan clenched his teeth. He tried to keep his head cool the best he could. Bae Sungmin was Bae Sungmin. A kind and sincere man who was anxiously searching for his daughter, Bae Suzy. However, if he was found by others, they would definitely kill him. Of course, they couldn't go to the great city either. There would be no way the guards would not know of a lich entering. And he couldn't just leave this situation as it was. Sheet. Moreover, his head was a mess because of the situation with the command clan. He felt like this was a situation they would use the phrase, out of the frying pan and into the fire. Fortunately, the potion worked. Because the concept of recovery was vague, and the potion had a bit of holy component that it would cause harm to undead, Taehwan was skeptical. But for some reason Bae Sungmin accepted the components. Like Taehwan expected, Sungmin wasn't a normal undead. Afterwards the two had a conversation. Their ordeal that was just 1 year ago that Bae Sungmin had no recollection of. You mean I have a daughter? Yes. Her name is Bae Suzy and she should be around 10 years old now. She was a really nice and cute girl. We would even laugh and say that she's a small angel. Bae Suzy was like an oasis in a desert. She was very popular not because she was simply just kind and cute but because she was smart for her age. Then where is my daughter Bae Suzy? The fighting king kidnapped her. You left the great city to find him. This was 1 year ago. The fighting king had. Bae Sungmin continued to say that title. Fortunately, it seemed like he believed to a certain degree of what Kim Taehwan said. Although he was weakened, Sungmin knew how to differentiate between a truth and a lie. The power of the spirit within him made it possible. My daughter Bae Suzy, tell me more about her. And so his voice became a bit softer. Taehwan nodded his head. We were summoned to the Blue Temple where you lost both your arms. Though for some reason you have a pair now. Anyway, after that Suzy did everything. If Muyang wasn't there, that would have also been impossible. There were quite a lot of things Muyang helped out. Although he was extremely cold, the warmth he rarely showed was enough to invigorate everyone. Suzy was really amazing. When she came out of the Sky Library, over 1,000 people gathered to take Suzy into their group. I just had 2 to 3 people. Haha. Bae Sungmin still had a cold expression. However, it felt like he slowly opened up. Knowing that Bae Suzy was his daughter and as his daughter received compliments, it really felt odd to him. I was looking for my daughter. He didn't even know what he was looking for. But he had a strong obsession that he needed to find something. Now he found out what he was looking for. Bae Suzy. My daughter who was kidnapped by the fighting king. Muyang didn't tell him. He never asked him either. However, as he now figured out what exactly he was looking for, now he needed to ask. who the fighting king was and where he was at. I'm going to rip his limbs apart and rip his skin off. I'm going to place a curse that will make him live eternally and make him suffer. Bae Sungmin didn't know that this feeling he had was revenge. One after another his feelings were being revived. Things that weren't allowed for an undead. This also could be considered as evolving. I can't leave aside the story regarding the Star of David either. That time. I need you to go to the great city and bring news. Huh. Please give this crystal to Myung. Taehwan shivered his whole body. He said Myung. That name popped out of Sungmin's lips. The man really was Myung Hyungnim? A few days ago Taehwan was attacked by the Command clan. That time someone who he suspected as Myung came forth and killed them before disappearing into thin air. Taehwan was able to escape after many complications. However, afterward that incident he was able to continue living in hiding outside of the great city. Go to the Sun Guild. I'll join afterwards. Bae Sungmin passed Kim Taehwan a crystal the size of a fingernail which contained his memories and information. Of course he also placed appropriate measures just in case. His relationship with Kim Taehwan seemed certain, but he placed a trap using all his magical powers just in case. If Taehwan was to go to the wrong place, the crystal would self-destruct. It is really the Myung I remember? Find out with your own two eyes. Bae Sungmin was unable to enter the great city. He needed time to recover. Even the connection with Myung was momentarily disconnected when he escaped Moon's reality marble. It seemed like Taehwan was the only way for him to deliver a message to Myung as of right now. Taehwan looked at the crystal given by Sungmin. I have no idea what on earth is going on. His mind was complicated. However, one thing was certain. I need to confirm it. Their relationship continued even now. Taehwan felt he could solve the problem regarding the Command clan and the mysteries happening within the great city once he saw Myung. He's able to deal with death. The reason why Sungmin Mr. became a lich would definitely be connected to him. Taehwan nodded and then turned his body. Please take care. I'll quickly go and come back. The great city was chaotic. Felt like everyone was on edge. They seemed to be holding their swords and were suspicious of their surroundings. He even saw a few buildings completely destroyed. But there were no signs of them being fixed. Strange. It was very different from the normal lively scenes of the great city. While walking in the gloomy atmosphere, Taehwan was able to coincidentally meet a mercenary. As the mercenary he saw a few times from the underground passed him on the street, Taehwan grabbed hold of him. Hey, did something happen? Oh, Kim Taehwan. You were alive. I was outside the great city for a bit to complete a request. Is that so? I knew it. I felt that it was odd for you to suddenly ask what happened in this current situation. The mercenary heaved a deep sigh. However, it wasn't long. At most 15 days. Taehwan felt like something happened during that period of time. The mercenary whispered into Taehwan's ears. It's been crazy these days. The Sun Guild lost. They lost. As Taehwan spoke loudly, the mercenary was startled. The mercenary quickly blocked Taehwan's mouth with his hand and spoke quietly. Speak quietly. Either way, the Sky Devil Church appeared. People say they placed their base at Sky Library. The Sun Guild attacked with a great army, but they lost. They say that they were looking for cooperation from other groups and were preparing for a second attack, but it's hard to say what's going to happen. TSK. The Sun Guild lost. They lost within the great city. Something that couldn't happen happened, and Taehwan was silently shocked. And so the atmosphere is like this because of it? Well, there was that, but the Command clan has also infiltrated the great city. Right now it's a commotion because of this. If a house suddenly gets destroyed, a trial is started by force, and these things occurred frequently. A trial. A trial. It was a kind of test. It was a fight with your life on the line. If you live, you would receive a reward, but if you die, it was the end. It seemed like the partially destroyed buildings in his surrounding were sacrificed like that. You be careful. If you seem a bit suspicious, the guards will try to kill you. Thanks for the advice. Phew, due to this situation we have more work, but the problem is that many people are dying off. If this continues, I might need to leave the great city. The mercenary clicked his tongue and left. Taehwan's expression hardened. In just 2 weeks, rapid change seemed to have happened. How in the world did Muyang Hyungnim enter the Sun Guild? Kim Taehwan started to act quickly as he realized there wasn't much time left. Afterwards, Taehwan couldn't help but tilt his head to the side when he arrived at the front gate of the Sun Guild. As he had been so busy, he wasn't able to think deeply, but he had no way of knowing how Muyang became part of the Sun Guild. From what I remember of Hyungnim's skills, even the Sun Guild would be interested in him. That's right. Muyang was strong. From the time they met at the Blue Temple, he was strong, incomparable to anyone else. Even the Great Sun Guild would try anything to recruit him if they knew Muyang's true worth. However, Muyang was always alone. He never socialized with anyone. He seemed like he purposely made a distance between others so that they didn't interfere with one another. And that sort of man entered the largest group, the Sun Guild. Those who know of Muyang wouldn't be able to help but smile at the thought. Of course, it was in itself hard to believe that he was still alive, as he had thought Muyang died in the Sky Library. Even when he met the fully armored man a while ago and had suspicions that the man might be Muyang, but he didn't bother to really check because of the same reason. Taehwan was certain to some degree of Muyang's death. If he is alive, he would have secretly infiltrated the Sun Guild because he had a plan. Taehwan inwardly nodded his head. Muyang didn't like showing himself. He would have certainly spent his time with other guild members quietly. Even if Taehwan was to enter the Sun Guild, it was most difficult to know how he was going to find Muyang. Stop. What can I do for a member of the Luminescent Guild? The Sun Guild's main castle. It was a huge castle that had about 10 floors, and surrounding the huge building the atmosphere was chaotic. Taehwan was fully alert as he felt like the guards who were walking around the place would draw their swords at any time. Among the guards, one asked Taehwan after seeing the luminescent mark on his shoulder. "I'm looking for a person." "Who are you looking for?" "Someone named Muyang. He might go by a different name. Please allow me to enter to find him." "Are you talking about Muyang, the commander-in-chief?" Taehwan's eyes shook slightly. Was there such a position in the Sun Guild? If there was, he could feel the greatness of the position just from hearing his title. The commander-in-chief represented the highest commanding officer within an army. The commander-in-chief? Actually, the commander-in-chief did say that someone would come looking for him. "Who should I tell him you are?" Taehwan was still doubtful, but the cold atmosphere lifted somewhat. Since only the members of the Sun Guild knew about Muyang, they felt that it would be unlikely for an enemy of his to appear. On the other hand, Taehwan was just dumbfounded. Was the commander-in-chief really the Muyang he thought he knew? Muyang's image was always close to solitude, but the title was completely opposite to that image. On top, it was a ridiculously fast promotion speed. It had only been a year since Muyang disappeared. It was obviously impossible for Muyang to become the commander-in-chief in just 1 year, even if he entered the Sun Guild right away and built his status. It would have also been impossible for Muyang to gain that much ability in just 1 year. It was because, at the Blue Temple, Muyang did stand out, but compared to the strongest humans he was still lacking. "I'm Kim Taehwan." Either way, the die were cast. After bringing up the name Muyang, if their reaction wasn't great, he even thought of secretly infiltrating the castle or even fighting them. "Please wait here for a moment." A guard left. However, they didn't easily let Taehwan in. They're impenetrable. There were more than 20 people visible to Taehwan. To protect the castle, this many people were on watch. After waiting for about 30 minutes, the guard who went into the castle quickly ran out. "Please enter. The commander-in-chief wishes to see you." How many people were members of the Sun Guild? There was a statistic that there were more than 20,000 people. Among them, most were middle-aged men who were members of the Sun Guild for more than 5 years, and if he counted the visitors who stayed at the castle, There seemed to be about 21,000 to 22,000 people. If he added the people who worked for them, the numbers multiplied. Amongst the guilds, the Sun Guild definitely had a lot of members to be within the top 3. Of course, the group with the most members was, of course, the holy city Mulalin. The city itself was a sanctuary and its inhabitants were a part of the group. Either way, that many members didn't all stay at the main castle. Nevertheless, the castle seemed full. You just need to open this door and go in. The guard who escorted him up the 10 floors purely by walking slightly lowered his head and looked at the large iron door that was in front of Taejuan. Taejuan was overwhelmed just by walking up. Even though Taejuan entered the Luminescent Guild, one of the 9 guilds, the size was incomparable. The Luminescent Guild might be half the size of the Sun Guild at most. But, did that mean the members of the Sun Guild were for quantity rather than quality? That wasn't the case. Dragon Pond, Tiger Cave, 1. A pond where the dragon lives or a cave where tigers live. Taejuan felt like he came to a place like that. Taejuan swallowed his saliva. Is the person on the other side of the door really Muyang? He pushed the door half in doubt. Soon, the huge iron door pushed back and the interior of the room was visible. It's been a while. Taejuan couldn't help but freeze due to the voice that spoke as soon as he entered the room. He couldn't help but do so. There was no way he would have forgotten that voice. Muyang, Hyungnim. Brr. He felt a shudder. He was truly Muyang. Before he arrived, he thought, perhaps it might be Muyang, but it was no more than a thought. He also slightly felt as though he was dreaming. What was more surprising was Muyang's appearance. It's the same. Muyang wore the same armor as the man that disappeared into dust after dying from Hyungbish. Different from the huge door, the room was small and Muyang was sitting in a chair with a dragon design while he looked over his responsibilities. It didn't suit him, but it was still Muyang. Were you here from the beginning? I entered just recently. I think it has been a bit more than a month. What's this about the commander-in-chief? It's my first time hearing about such a position. After putting down the documents he was looking over, Muyang looked at Taejuan. It was a position created temporarily. Since there is no one better than me to get rid of the bastards that are roaming around. That grandiose title wasn't made by me though. It was Hyacinth's opinion. That Muyang needed a title that showed his high position to lead others. Taejuan was speechless as he was dumbfounded. In his head, Taejuan couldn't understand what in the world Muyang would have done to receive such a position so easily from the Sun Guild. No, he was confused as to if this Muyang was the Muyang he knew of. In this place where there were tons of strong men, Muyang had to be strong to be within the top 10 humans to stand out. There are probably a lot of things you would like to tell me. But before that, isn't there something you need to give me? Ah. It seemed like Muyang roughly knew why Taejuan came to this place. Taejuan nodded his head. Afterwards, he took out a crystal the size of a fingernail from his side. Sungmin, Mr. told me to give this to you. It's an information crystal. There was a low possibility for them to drop a crystallization when a noble devil died. Seemed like Bae Sungmin created something similar on his own after watching. The magical power was contained in the crystal in the form of letters and images. After receiving the crystal, Muyang's expression instantly became serious. Moon. It's about him. Muyang knew Bae Sungmin didn't die. Although he didn't know about the details of the situation, he thought that Sungmin would approach him in some way. Then Taejuan appeared and gave him a crystal with important information. Muyang dismantled the crystal with his eyes and concentrated on it further. Muyang did attack the guys who camped at the Sky Library once but lost. The command clan Jiangshi and some guys who he wasn't able to identify. Probably the followers of the Sky Devil Church. He wasn't able to push them away. Although Muyang was able to evade all kinds of traps and fight them face to face, he was stopped by the mighty 7th type of Jiangshi and Moon. Muyang went into battle himself, but the results were the same. Even if Moon hid his body, there was no gap to get to him. Numerous devils protected Moon. As a result, they failed in their assassination. To assassinate a strong person they said it took a while, but to assassinate Moon it seemed like it would take at least a few years. It seemed like he didn't have any kind of weakness. However, the information Bae Sungmin gave him would be different in some way. Moon. He deals with this space and within it he raises devils. He uses power related to the space, but he has a weakness. He flinched while he read along the inner crystal. A weakness. Moon had a weakness. A signpost to maintain the space. There wasn't anything visible like a talisman. It is impossible to always maintain that much space and devils just by using his skill. It meant that his powers can only be exhibited in special areas. The hexagrams buried underground. If you destroy the things made by an unknown material, Moon would also lose his strength. A total of 6, 1 in the Sky Library and the other 5 placed somewhere within the great city. Clench. He clenched his left fist tightly. And pressed the button on top of his desk. Beep. It filled the castle with noise. What did you do? It's the signal to strengthen the boundaries and to hold an emergency meeting. Follow me. Myung quickly started to move. Moon's weakness, who no one could find out. That was found by Bae Sungmin. He had no more time to waste. Remove the hexagrams hidden within the great city. It was the special command Myung gave during the meeting. Instantly few dozens of detached forces were created and they started to investigate the great city. And for the friendship with the Luminescent Guild, Kim Tae-hwan was treated as an envoy. If things worked out well, Myung thought Tae-hwan's position would be strengthened and a connection with the Luminescent Guild would be possible. Myung also didn't just fool around. Late in the evening, Myung became a shadow. Although he failed in assassinating Moon, others couldn't escape Myung's touch. As expected, he was here. Myung found his whereabouts by using the intelligence branch through Hyacinth. Hyung Bish finally caught his tail. Because he could suddenly appear and vanish into thin air. If Myung moved with a group, Hyung Bish would notice and run away. His abilities were so great that even within the command clan his rank would be around the top. And so, Myung came to this place on his own. However, if it was Hyung Bish, he was worth Myung acting alone. With his subordinates, Hyung Bish was on the other side of the building chanting a spell with his eyes closed. He was creating a trial. Swoosh. Myung, who thought it was the best time to act, started to move. He became one with the darkness and no one was able to hear his footsteps. His sword strike was accurate. Fwaish. The moonlight reflected off anguish and spread everywhere. At the same time, Hyung Bish's right arm was cut off and a line continued to the middle of his chest. It's low. It was a perfect success. But from the beginning, Myung didn't think he could assassinate Hyung Bish with 100% certainty. Hyung Bish wasn't a man who would die just because you cut off a part of his body. But this was enough. An assassin? Hyung Bish winced. Although blood was flooding out, he didn't show any signs of surprise. Hyung Bish. Do you know me? That means you would also know that you would die. A master of the command clan. His upper body split open. At the same time, from the inner parts of his body, numerous tentacles poured out and surrounded him. These tentacles didn't differentiate between friend or foe. Instead, it ate up his surrounding subordinates and recovered his injuries. Also, a few types of red jiangshi also appeared. It was apparent that Myung was getting into a difficult fight. However, Myung calmly took out his talisman. Sword 2, Sword 3 and King Mutant. From the talisman, 3 undead popped out. It wasn't a one against many type of situation. Undead? That's unusual. Hyung Bish's eyes were filled with curiosity. He was a corpse sorcerer who was able to handle corpses. He was also a great master. Hyung Bish quickly realized that Myung's undead weren't ordinary just by looking at them. You will soon be added to this line. Myung made a short affirmation. If Myung made Hyung Bish into an undead, he could sway the command clan. And so he had to win this fight. 1. Dragon Pond, Tiger Cave, a 4-character idiom that means a very rough and dangerous place. The 4 characters specifically mean a deep pond where the dragon lives and a cave where the tiger lives. Rip. Crunch. The tentacles absorbed everything. Like the suckers of an octopus, they latched onto everything and absorbed them as is. Sheet. What is this? As the building was destroyed, the people inside it came out. Even though it was the evening, this place was in the inner parts of the great city. If there was a commotion, there were, of course, people who would gather. Maybe because of this, Hyung-bish didn't seem like he was going to drag it out too long. Sword 2 sliced a tentacle, took a step forward and asked Mu-young. Please give me your order. Take care of the Jiangshi. I'll take care of him. The 10th type, the red Jiangshi, and the 4th type, the black Jiangshi. The Jiangshi were corpses and they were unable to feel pain. Even if their attacks didn't reach Mu-young, they were still enough to be a hindrance. Mu-young made Sword 2, Sword 3, and the King Mutant take care of those creatures. It seemed like he could categorize the red Jiangshi as at most being high rank, and the black Jiangshi at the first level of the highest rank. Just by simple calculations, his undead might seem lacking, but Sword 2, Sword 3, and the King Mutant weren't ordinary undead. Just because their levels of power were similar didn't mean the results of the fight would be the same for the fight between the undead. It was enough if they just stalled. Hyung-bish, let's settle this today. In the past, when Mu-young was active as an assassin, Mu-young had a connection with Hyung-bish. While he was completing an assassination, he had to face the person's bodyguard. While he succeeded in his assassination of the target, Hyung-bish had crazily gained on him. Mu-young tried to avoid useless fights and make an escape, but because Hyung-bish persistently followed him, they fought day and night for 2 days. In the end, they both became wrecks and the fight became a draw, but now was the time to complete the match that they weren't able to finish back then. Receive my baptism of death. Hyung-bish repeated a spell. Then on top of his head, a space was opened and a huge skeleton's face popped out. The skeleton's blank eyes looked at Mu-young. Death. That skeleton was death itself. The power to kill the person it continuously looked at. A skill that was like a big cheat. However, it definitely had a limit. The 6 paths, the Azura's path. Mu-young also opened the entrance to another world. If death popped out, then he just needed to fight it with his own manifestation of death. It's been a while since I've breathed the air outside. Merduden popped out in a semi-transparent form. Merduden wore a gold crown and held a silver trident, but there was a change in his outer appearance. His body was similar to a frog, but his head was changed to something similar to a seahorse. It seemed like he was slowly taking the form of the Merduden king in past literature. Fight against death. Is death the name of the skeleton? He is truly ugly. Merduden laughed uproariously and called out specters. The numbers were a staggering 3,000. It appears it was more quantity than quality, but it was more than enough to wrap around that skeleton's head. As his skill became instantly disabled, Hyung-bish frowned. What a strange guy. The gaze Hyung-bish gave Mu-young was definitely filled with shock and respect. He was surprised that there was someone else besides him who could control corpses as well as death, and the fact that all of this wasn't ordinary seemed to have produced these sorts of emotions. However, was that really all? Swoosh. Mu-young held anguish. At the same time, a horn sprouted on his head. Now spiritism? I guess I need to dissect you after I kill you. Astonishment. And the continuation of surprise. In a pure way, Hyung-bish respected Mu-young. Although Mu-young did try to assassinate him, the skills Mu-young showed were beyond plain and close to extraordinary. Hyung-bish also found out that the identity of that horn was evidence of a god's gift. A god who's extremely rough and strong. However, that was all. Just because he received a gift from a god, it didn't make him invincible. However, it's only a drop in the bucket compared to the god I serve. The tentacles gathered near Hyung-bish more quickly. Within time, his whole body was wrapped with tentacles, and within it, a black eye popped out. Push. Mu-young's sword reached him. But it touched a thin layer. The grains are continuously changing. After the tentacles wrapped around the whole body as if numerous bodies were put together, There were tons of grains and they continuously changed. In Muyang's position, you couldn't help but say that he was a picky opponent to fight against. The god I serve is the master of the sky. The true sky devil. Qiu, the skeleton cried out loud. Including Merduden, the specters were greatly swayed by it. If Muyang was to drag on like this, death would once again look at Muyang. Hyungbish spoke. It's incomparable to the blessings of a minor god. You talk too much. A minor god? If Azura heard this, he would personally take his head. Hyungbish moved. Prank. Anguish stopped Hyungbish's movement. Then Hyungbish stretched his body and attacked Muyang. Even grains have a constant form. Muyang concentrated his mind. Like water flowing in a river, he calmed his mind and paid attention to the form Hyungbish's grains created. Look. This is the power given to me by the master of the sky. Incomparable to a gift given by a minor god. Tung. 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 The attacks stopped at regular intervals. When the grains changed, the sound was different. A difference that no one else but Muyang could tell. Yao. He changed his attitude. Muyang moved. Then Hyungbish wasn't able to follow Muyang's speed easily. Push. The middle of the heart was accurately pierced. It won't do any. There is nothing absolute in the world. He might think that if he was to get injured, he just would need to recover once again. As that's what happened up until now, he spoke as if it was nothing. However, what Muyang had pierced was the start of the grains. All things in the world had grains, and when that part was focused, no matter how strong and firm it was, it would crumble. Flash. Muyang's sword drew a line. I can't recover? Hyungbish's eye was instantly filled with fear. The regeneration had stopped. His body didn't move as well. As if he was stabbed by a hook. It was the first time this had happened. When he met Moon, Moon was able to oppress his devilishness, but wasn't able to confine his body. However, this guy was strange from beginning to end. He was eccentric. Baroshio Kunjaruja. Hyungbish cast a curse. Then the surrounding space was distorted and a new world started to form. It was trial creation. He was trying to create a trial forcefully and separate his body. Even in front of Muyang, a message related to the trial started to pop up. Entrance to Strange Devil's Trial I. A small hole. The trial didn't expand yet. Muyang continued to strike the grains and took out a dagger from his side. And threw it inside the end part of the small hole. Everything has grains. This world would also have grains for sure. If Muyang was to surpass Kingslayer's level, he would definitely be able to see him again. It was the same about the trial. Even more when it wasn't completely created. It was much easier to read the grains. Rip. Ryip. The dagger Muyang threw was nailed to the grains of the trial. Then, the trial that was being created was once again destroyed. Hyungbish looked at it as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Who are you? How is this possible? Something that couldn't have happened had happened. Now it wasn't even extraordinary. It was impossible. An area where he couldn't understand in his head. A gift from God. Simply just by looking at what Muyang had accomplished, it was enough to make others believe he was a god himself. However, that was Hyungbish's last regret. You have killed a subordinate of the Sky Devil. The Sky Devil isn't one of the 8 Deva guardians of Buddhism, but is a god who was in a hostile relationship with Azura. Azura is very happy. Azura's blessing is strengthened. Now, Azura's vassal title raises spirit ability by 30. Azura's blessing. A strengthening of a title. It wasn't bad. However, Muyang paid attention to the residue left after Hyungbish changed. As evidence of a god's gift, a black eye popped out that then turned into a small gem and rolled onto the ground. When he grabbed the fragment with his hand and looked at it, the Eye of the Sky was activated. Name: Immortal's Fragment. Rank: None. Effect: a fragment of the Immortal King. When the fragments are collected, it transforms into an essence, and the essence becomes a material to administer the strength of the Immortal King. the immortal king. He had found the second clue. He never thought Hyung-bish would have it. Moon would also have a fragment of the immortal king. There were a lot of similarities between the energy felt by Hyung-bish and Moon. However, Moon was much stronger than Hyung-bish. It meant that Moon had a bigger fragment or more fragments than Hyung-bish. Art of Death. From the tips of Mu-young's hand, a dark energy stretched out. One who controls corpses and death. Just by its existence, it is suitable for the art of death. Art score is 91. Rank of skill, Art of Death, increased by 1. B-A. The Art of Death's upgrade to a rank has restored the opponent's stats as they were. Name, Hyung-bish. Level, 435. Type, Dark Champion. Strength 440. Agility 379. Stamina 500. Intelligence 422. Wisdom 385. Magic resistance 330. Power of Death 410. Plus skills Tentacles A. Jiangshi Technique A+. Death A+. And Devilification A. Are usable. Plus Understanding of Death. Immune to mind control. Plus extraordinary defensibility. Plus at most 20th type of Jiangshi can be controlled. As Hyung-bish was turned into an undead, the surrounding Jiangshi also stopped moving. And as they were dependent on Hyung-bish, they slowly kneeled to Mu-young. Greetings, Master of Darkness. There were 5 red Jiangshi and 3 black Jiangshi that were fine. Just with this, his military strength had greatly risen. Not enough to reach Moon, but enough to sway the command clan. Moon. You have a fragment. Mu-young's eyes became heavier. Moon didn't just have an immortal's fragment but another fragment as well. Fragments of the fissure. He remembered how Anguish cried when he approached closer to him. It had realized that another fragment of the fissure was nearby and cried. Gremory asked Mu-young to find 3 fragments. And among them one was kept by Moon, the sect leader of the Sky Devil Church. Moon's eyebrows wiggled. He has started to disturb my source. The 6 hexagrams placed within the whole great city. They were Moon's strength, but that wasn't all. However, the Sun Guild was disturbing the hexagrams, thinking that they could just weaken Moon's strength. Those fools, it's already too late. Of course, it was definitely enough to weaken Moon's power. But they were already too late in dealing with a more important matter. The hexagrams have already absorbed the energy they needed. The preparation in creating a trial was also completed. Since they had already completed a few dozen experiments to check that there was nothing wrong, now it was time to complete the final step. Moon smiled. And spread both arms wide. Oh, Sky Devil. Swish dash. Red stars started to fall from the sky. Although they seemed like a group of shooting stars, they all didn't seem right. A scene hard to see even in the demon god's territory. However, this was all planned by Moon. He was the sect leader of the Sky Devil Church. And what Moon wanted to carry out in the great city was the advent of the Sky Devil. Soon the hexagrams that wrapped around the great city started to emit red light towards the end of the sky. The falling stars reacted to the light and were altered into blood. It felt like the world was covered by the light. Moon shivered. At last. After a long time of waiting, he attained his long-cherished desire. From Moon's forehead and both wrists, a devil's seal came into view. At the same time, the Sky Devil's trial has begun. The great city was drenched in blood. The size of the command clan's military was discovered to be approximately 3,000 soldiers. Their numbers couldn't be compared to the Sun Guild, but they had somehow managed to occupy the Sky Library and make it their base. Through its geographical position and their modus operandi, they had gained victory over the Sun Guild in the First War. We destroyed 5 hexagrams. All that remains is the one inside the Sky Library. Mu-young's plan was simple. Using Hyung-bish, he made him infiltrate the command clan, discover the location of the last hexagram and destroy it. The result was successful. Hyung-bish carried out Mu-young's operation superbly. However, that was the beginning. The Sky Devil's trial has begun. The great city and the ancient king's castle are no longer accessible. The Sky Devil is craving blood. Complete all trials. If you are successful, rewards will be given according to your results. Alternately, if you fail, the Sky Devil will be resurrected. Time limit, 1,000 hours. Number of survivors, 875,449 people. A red comet fell. The world was filled with the same light, and at the same time blood-red waves were everywhere. Sky Devil's trial? What is a Sky Devil? What the heck is this? I have no idea what is going on. The people were taken aback. The Sun Guild's elite were no different. However, it was universally recognized as an extraordinary situation. And the world, taking this into consideration, abruptly changed to suit the situation. Thump, thump. The first thing that changed were houses. At every house and at the castle, arms and legs sprouted and they became monsters. As for the people inside, even Muyang had no choice but to search for only the important people and escape. If the interior of the house was perceived as a model of comfort in the past, it was no different from the stomach of a monster now. It was because a strong acid that melted and corroded everything was flowing out and into the surroundings. Family Ordnance has appeared. Family Ordnance attacks everything that moves. Overthrow Family Ordnance and gather 20 essences. Mumiyang. What in the world happened? Hyacinth was taken aback. Although her hair was disheveled as if she had just woken up, her eyes were clear. It is an urgent situation. You need to pack your seal and escape. Ah, I understand. Just a moment. We're out of time. Gaiak. Muyang lifted Hyacinth smoothly and carried her on his shoulders, then went to where the seal was hidden close by. After this, he forcibly cut through the spell on the drawer, withdrew the seal from inside it and escaped the castle. The castle had certainly become a huge monster. But if there was something fortunate about the situation, it was that most of the Sun Guild's members had succeeded in escaping. Lady Hyacinth. Commander-in-Chief. They approached Muyang with hurried strides. Of course, they were a limited number of people who acknowledged Muyang's service to a certain degree. There were few people who followed Muyang within the Sun Guild. Swoosh. Muyang withdrew anguish. Pure white ice came out of his whole body. Seeing that, Hyacinth furrowed her brow. No way. From now on I will destroy the castle. Muyang said coolly. The danger would diminish only if the Sun Guild's main castle, that enormous structure, was eliminated. And maybe they could get something called an essence. Smash. Smrayas. Just by walking it was enough to overwhelm people. As the message has said, the monster called Family Ordnance attacked everything that moved. If you stay still, won't you be attacked? Well, it did say it attacks moving things. It is often true that it's the right answer to sit still and strike after you see an opportunity. First of all, we need to investigate the situation. Each person came up with their own solution. Not everyone was willing to move aggressively in a sudden situation. The first thing was to identify. Their words were certainly not wrong, however it was not the right answer either. So this is what the Sky Devil's trial was. Right. Even Muyang knew this. In the past, after the Great Calamity, when Moon had created the Sky Devil Church and started a war with the holy city of Mulalin, he had personally talked about this. Only the person who overcame the Sky Devil's trial was qualified to face the Sky Devil. At that time he did not think it was really a trial. Many people interpreted it as only the ups and downs of life. Muyang was one of those. However, at that time this kind of thing didn't happen. This was certainly true. If the Sky Devil's trial existed, why did he not do it in the past? On the other hand, why was it possible now? Clearly there was some difference that Muyang did not know. If he figured that out, it would even be possible to strike a checkmate move. The Sky Library. The wall has been struck. A huge blue wall had developed around the Sky Library. It seemed that perhaps the Sky Devil would resurrect from it. The walls of light were so huge he couldn't even see the grains. So, Muyang decided that he would first start with getting rid of the thing in front of him. Gasp. Pop. With a huge breath, Muyang stormed out. Then the castle moved its hands to grab Muyang, but his speed was so great it was impossible for the castle to keep up. Anguish cut off a leg. Then the wound appeared and the spot froze. Thump, thump, thump. Muyang continued to kick the castle's frozen legs. Then the legs that supported the castle soon shattered. The rest was only a matter of repetition. When the arms and legs were removed, the castle surprisingly returned to its original appearance. It would have been enough to get rid of the newly formed part. Boring. Muyang dusted off Anguish. Just over 10,000 guild members saw that image. When no one was able to easily take the lead, Muyang demonstrated it personally. As if they just needed to do the same. Then Muyang turned his attention to Hyacinth. After realizing what she had to do, Hyacinth hurriedly took out the seal. I command you through the guardian seal of the Sun Guild. Eliminate the surrounding monsters, and as for the essence. Quack. This. What is this? Ack. Something is in the ground. Suddenly people started screaming. Black hands protruded from the earth and took people into the ground. The people that were dragged beneath didn't return. Muyang seemed to know what that was. Specters. The specters attack the people who are standing still. Specters do not attack people who are alone. It was a phrase he'd seen a lot somewhere before. He'd experienced trials similar to this before. No, most people gathered in this place would have. The Sky Library. Among the trials he had experienced in that place, there was one that was similar to this. Muyang nodded his head. If it were specters, it was rather a good thing. Fuck. Skills don't work. If it is a specter-type monster, shouldn't light-based skills work normally? Everyone was flustered. This was not the usual specter. The skills that worked were extremely limited. Intruders. Let's get rid of the intruders. There was no other choice. The specters were the original inhabitants of the castle. So therefore it was correct to think that they were the imbued spirits of the ancient king's castle. They were excellent warriors and humans were merely intruders. It was the job of a warrior to reject an intruder. A spirit that had been honed and polished for thousands, or tens of thousands of years couldn't be removed with a common skill. Those spirits can only be dealt with by spirits. Merdudin. A black circle formed behind Muyang's back. Azura's path opened and thousands of spirits poured out. It was a skill Azura had handed to Muyang. If the Sky Devil merely dealt with evil spirits, you could say Azura was the king of evil spirits. As they are both similar types of god, they should also be able to inflict a blow directly. They are great evil spirits. They are very desirable. Merdudin drooled. He was planning to even incorporate them into his army. Then Muyang spoke briefly. Swing to your heart's content. Muyang was also planning to do the same. No matter how many times he eliminated the family ordnance monsters, he couldn't see any essence. However, when he eliminated a newly discovered purple family ordnance, an essence fell off. So I have to kill the colored family ordnances. So to speak, it was an Admiral-class monster. However, the colored family ordnances were much stronger and more agile than the regular ones. More than 50 elite guild members had died while eliminating a colored family ordnance. Due to Merdudin, the danger from the specters had lessened to some degree, but as if they had waited, other problems arose. Winged women. It was because of the emergence of shapeless ghosts, which were a little different from succubi. Night hags delude both men and women. The more you gather, the more the possibility of collective hypnosis increases. They drooled. The women stripped naked and the men moved their hips back. As if they were dreaming, their eyes closed and their bodies trembled. They enjoyed pleasure with the most blissful expressions in the world. People with high magic resistance were able to resist, but all of those that didn't were afflicted by the night hag's bedazzlement. Those who were bedazzled did not get up. Their spirits were sucked up and their bodies quickly dried up and died. And those who died in that way became vampires. What is this? Weren't they dead? Guaok. Vampires suck the blood of a living person. Those persons whose blood is sucked will be mentally controlled by the vampires. It was a feast for all types of ghosts. And the ghosts wanted one thing. And that was division. Ultimately, what the ghosts targeted were the united people. When they were alone, they were less of a target. So it caused people to realize that unity would bring them harm, which resulted in dispersion. At this rate, it's better for me to move alone. If we unite, the progress becomes slow. It's better to separate the strong ones. Even the Sun Guild was already beginning to show signs of division. The situation of other places then was obvious. And when the people separated, a message suddenly floated up. Would you like to become a follower of the Sky Devil? You can be safe from the family ordinances, specters, night hags, vampires, etc. Furthermore, you can receive the Sky Devil's blessing. The Sky Devil's blessing strengthens your body's ability. The Sky Devil's blessing gives you new skills. The path to becoming the Sky Devil's devoted follower. When one became a follower of the Sky Devil, they could free themselves from the wearisome spirits. Not just that. One could even receive the blessing of the god that made this trial. So there was nothing to lose. Force. In the underworld, in order to survive, strength was an indispensable criterion. A world where the weak died and only the strong survived. Who would refuse if they said they could make you stronger? There was no reason to leave the easy path and choose the difficult path. Those who pursued immediate gain and those who were weak chose that route. They even took matters lightly and thought that nothing would really happen even if they became a devoted follower. It was just a matter of nodding the head. The procedure wasn't complicated, so that was the icing on the cake. After choosing the path of the devoted follower, a long phrase floated up. Congratulations. You have become the Sky Devil's devoted follower. Kill everyone apart from other devoted followers. After eliminating them, a score will be awarded and you will receive a reward from the Sky Devil. However, if you fail to collect a minimum of 500 points within the time limit, you will become a specter. The score of the eliminated target is based on the influence, rather than the force. First priority target for elimination, 10,000 points. Hyacinth. Second priority target, 7,000 points. Bahamut. Third priority target, 5,000 points. Lawless Jean. Fourth priority target, 3,000 points. Itsuki Yuka. 10th priority target, 500 points. Muyang. After seeing his name on the 10th spot, Muyang frowned. The rankings seemed to vary according to influence rather than force. Hyacinth was currently the most influential girl in the Sun Guild. Since the Sun Guild itself was the strongest guild in the great city, it seemed like she was ranked first. Like this, disorder is induced. The more the Sky Devil's devoted followers increase, the more difficult it would become to complete the trial. The number was small now, but as more and more people were divided and frightened, in the end a lot of people would lose heart. He had to move fast even if he had to divide his attention. Luminescent Guild's Guild Master Bahamut, Lawless Clan's leader Lawless Jean, and Ninja Group's Queen Itsuki Yuka. The representative groups of the great city included the Sun Guild, the Luminescent Guild and the Lawless Clan. But not the ninjas. It seemed as though a lot of them had flowed into the city, but due to the trials their identities were exposed. Alexandro's name didn't come up. The name of Itsuki Yuka, the enemy that had never shown herself directly, was included in the list of targets for elimination. However, Alexandro Quintart's name had not been shown at all. He's either hidden perfectly or he's dead. The future had changed. A situation where he didn't know what would happen or when. However, Muyang inwardly shook his head. Alexandro. He wouldn't have died easily. In the past too, hadn't he survived to the end? Muyang. So you're Muyang. Kuhoha. There was a man who approached him with the specters. When the man laughed loudly, the spirits united and formed the shape of a sword. I'm overflowing with strength. The Sky Devil's blessing is really beautiful. The man's eyes were half rolled back into his head. He'd become a devout follower, and it seemed he had lost half his mind. A devout follower. In the end, becoming a believer meant being a coward. If he was in his right mind, there would be no way he wouldn't have been suspicious about becoming a devotee of the Sky Devil. Fung. Muyang pulled anguish out. Then a red light began to hang in the air surrounding Muyang. It was similar to the light that had appeared immediately after the Sky Devil's trial, but compared to that it was much more sluggish. The Absolute's domain. As soon as the man stepped into Muyang's domain, the sword made of specters trembled greatly. What is it? Are the specters afraid? The man's half-lidded eyes widened. Specters. A flock of the already deceased. There was no way that a feeling similar to fear would be possible and shouldn't be possible for them to feel. But the specters were afraid. As soon as they had entered Muyang's domain, they acted as if they had come to a place they should not have entered. Muyang's movements were like a shadow. Without even a sound. As if he wasn't there from the start, he approached and sliced the man's neck with one stroke. Slash. Gawk. The man's neck spurted and vomited up blood. But he didn't stop there. Muyang cut his fingers off one by one. He made shortcuts to each joint so that the man felt the maximum amount of pain. He cut off his ears, gouged out his eyeballs, and finally he tore his mouth open so that the interior was exposed. It was a scene that was brutal to the degree that even the Sun Guild members who were watching furrowed their brows. However, it was something he had to do once. The devoted followers of the Sky Devil will die in the most painful way. Soon after, thousands of spirits led by Moldudan swarmed behind Muyang and attacked the man. Kayawayak. The man uttered a strange shriek even though his neck was cut. As the specters burrowed into and passed through the man's entire body afterwards, nothing but bones remained. This was Muyang's warning to all. You had to be brave in order to become a Sky Devil's devotee. Muyang had no intention of participating in this game. The total amount of seals Hyacinth collected was 8. In fact, she basically held similar influence to the Sun Guild's guild master. But there were certainly those who looked upon Hyacinth with disgust. Hyacinth is too young. At this rate, the Sun Guild will be taken over by that man. The Fire Dragon Knights leader Lennon. He who had grown a long beard, stared at Muyang with bloodthirsty eyes. He was too wild. But sir, the Commander-in-Chief's forces could be ranked amongst the top 10. Shut up. Commander-in-Chief? He's just a guy with good luck. If you knew why the top 10 humans are the top 10, you wouldn't be able to make such absurd statements. Lennon's face was twisted like a wicked spirit's face. Originally, Lennon should have had the highest authority in case of emergencies. As it was now wartime and the Fire Dragon Knights was the Sun Guild's strongest group. The strength of 500 elites was truly enough to even kill a dragon. At this rate, if the trial comes to an end, it will be a problem if Alexandro returns. I have no cause to attack Muyang, and if Hyacinth wants it, command over the guild will probably be divided. Disorder, division. They weren't good words, since the result would end up being the downfall of the Sun Guild. But Lennon knew better than anyone else that Hyacinth was a soft-hearted girl. However, because of her strong defensive shield called Muyang, her colors had changed for a moment like a chameleon. What will you do? If he dies, Hyacinth will also come to her senses. Lennon gnashed his teeth. That was right. The main culprit behind everything. In the end, it was Muyang. If only Muyang was gone, Lennon would have been commanding the troops and breaking the trial. He could also have been nominated as the strongest candidate for the next guild master. One rotten apple completely spoiled the lot. Then, when the deputy chief tried to draw his sword, Lennon blocked him. Not now. I still have some cards left. As if he knew what the card was, the deputy chief was dissuaded. Chief, you shouldn't trust that wench because you don't know when she might stab you in the back. She's still a woman. In the end they become soft around men. Also, as long as I have a family heirloom, she has no choice but to follow me. Lennon groped at his chest and pulled out a talisman. Then as soon as he tore it, a black crow drawn with an ink stick flew up into the sky. He was summoning her. The ninja Itsuki Yuka. Since he had sent the order, there was no need to say more. Now the ninjas would remove Mu-young. Yuka, you can't escape me. Lennon laughed. He felt he should have done it sooner. Lennon nodded as he racked his mind, trying to think of a way to coax Hyacinth after killing Mu-young. The ghosts evolved little by little. For example, the houses united and became increasingly larger family ordinances, and the night hags materialized and attacked people more and more regularly. Perhaps it's likely that their influence grew more and more as the Sky Devil's followers increased. Lennon is a really dangerous guy. You're going to have to be careful with him. Balin. The deputy guild master suddenly went close up to Mu-young and spoke. Inside the guild, Abdullan's arms and legs had been cut off and he had become a useless person. However, somehow his spirit had not died. The composure of someone who knows something. Mu-young was able to guess where that spirit and composure came from. Those who had unknown power or secrets showed this kind of special composure. Is that advice? Lennon has a lot of greed. So he can't win this trial. You speak as if you know about the Sky Devil's trial. I don't know about the Sky Devil's trial, but I do know about the Sky Devil. Abdullan laughed humbly. Given the fact that he had just dealt with the colored family ordinance and obtained their essence, Abdullan's composure could not be explained in plain terms. When Mu-young didn't reply, Abdullan continued speaking. The Sky Devil is revered as a god, but in fact he isn't a god. He's just an enormous collection of evil. If he is a god, then he would be an artificial god? An artificial god. Moon had erected the Sky Devil Church. That was because he revered the Sky Devil that much. It was also described as the god opposing Azura. So Mu-young believed that the Sky Devil was one of many gods. However, Abdullan said that he wasn't. What does that mean? In the end, it's a difference of faith. If one becomes a god through faith, if that faith disappears, wouldn't the god also cease to exist? It was a new view. That meant, if you removed all those that believed in the Sky Devil, then the Sky Devil itself would disappear. That's the reason they are causing fear and gathering devoted followers. Did he mean that it wasn't a matter of simple division? The fake god was increasing the number of people that believed he was a real god. It would be the case if Abdullan's words were true, but at the center of this was Moon. If Moon had created the illusion of a god, he would be the key to everything. There is suspicious movement. It was a skill called sound transmission. The technique of conveying sound through the wind from a distance. It was the voice of ataraxia. 50 ninjas are moving. It seems they are after you, master. What are you going to do? Ninjas? It's Lennon. Mu-young knew that he had a relationship with Yuka. He knew that Lennon would make a move someday, but that time had come faster than he had thought. It seemed he really didn't want to see Mu-young commanding and leading the soldiers. Kill everyone. However, if it was the ninjas, especially if Yuka was included, ataraxia alone was not enough. Inwardly he shook his head as he added one more thing after his order to kill. No, we should go together. During the battle, Mu-young made a clone with the soul's tail, and ordered it to stay in the guild. Afterwards he moved to hunt the ninjas with ataraxia. Ninjas and assassins. Who was stronger and who was more useful was a popular issue for a long time. In particular, Wang Chunglin's research about ninjas was severe to a point where it was extremely focused. Perhaps it was because he felt they shared the same net. As a result, Wang Chunglin developed all ways and means to deal with ninjas. He dissected all of their peculiar skills, and injected all those techniques into the assassins in order to polish them up. Mu-young inherited all of those as the best assassin. Even though he had returned to the past, those skills were still alive. Twok. Below the bright red moon. A body was cut. Blood gushed. Soup. The ninja couldn't even finish his words and his mouth was pierced. Surprise attack. In an instant, half of the 50 ninjas had perished. Even the ninjas could not react quickly to the sudden attack. A fight between ninjas and assassins. In short, the biggest difference lay in who attacked first. They never thought Muyang would attack at this point. That small difference produced an irrevocable result. Ataraxia and Muyang had transformed into the most perfect assassins. They assimilated into the darkness and cut off the lifelines of the ninjas. I don't see Yuka. Itsuki Yuka and the strongest ninjas weren't visible. Did they think this was enough for Muyang's assassination? So it was disappointing. Yuka should have the discerning eye to determine the degree of Muyang's true self. Unlike Lenin. If she had seen his true self, she would have turned up personally or sent the greatest ninjas. The fact that she didn't was a testament to the fact that she did not even care about Muyang. It seemed they were sent to just show that they followed Lenin's order. Keep their bodies whole. They will be made into undead. I will follow your command. A voice flowed out. The lawless clan gave many advantages to Muyang in various ways. So much help had been provided just from the Swordbone trio and Ataraxia alone. Also, the ninjas needed to be killed in the best condition possible. Muyang smiled begrudgingly. He intended to turn the attacking ninjas into undead, and present them intactly to Lenin. You reap what you sow. To all Sky Devil followers, Hyacinth was the #1 target they had to kill. As she wasn't strong like Alexandro but just had high influence, to them she was truly an appropriate prey. This wasn't unknown to the Sun Guild either. Of course, men gathered near Hyacinth, and due to this, there were gaps in other places. Hyacinth, just because of you, a lot of people are dying. Don't you think you need to move some men to other places now? Lenin talked about the very point that Hyacinth felt guilty about. However, Hyacinth didn't really give orders. The power of the seal was considered absolute to the Sun Guild and Hyacinth's brothers and sisters. It was because about half their minds and bodies were modified to be influenced by the fundamental force of the seal. Hyacinth had the greatest number of seals, and the members of the Sun Guild had organized a battle formation to protect Hyacinth before she was even aware. Lenin knew this, but the reason why he pointed this out to Hyacinth was to sway her. Hyacinth secretly turned her eyes and looked at Muyang. Muyang didn't say a word. However, to Hyacinth he was the most reliable man in the world right now. What was there to be afraid of if he stood by her side? Hey, let's focus on hunting the family ordnance and collecting the essence. I don't think there are that many Sky Devil followers. Hyacinth changed the formation. As she allowed the change so easily, Lenin's expression hardened. This girl. If it was her in the past, she should have instantly stiffened with a pale face. It would have been normal for her to keep her head down and her mouth shut. But she was completely different now. It felt like she had become another person. The girl who was just young to Lenin was now looking straight into Lenin's eyes. As if she wasn't going to lose. This won't do. As expected, the guy next was the problem. Muyang. Because the guy was beside Hyacinth, she was changing. If Hyacinth was to pursue power, there was a definite possibility that the Sun Guild would be ripped apart. I must kill him. Lenin forcefully stopped his hurting urge to kill him. However, it was strange. Muyang should have disappeared by now. However, there were no signs of the ninjas acting. What in the world is Yuka doing? Itsuki Yuka, the master of ninjas, and the woman felt the empress. The woman, her mid-30s, with glamorous looks and body. She made the men who stood in front of her slightly flustered while they looked at her. His expression was endlessly cold. It seemed like he didn't have any emotions. Who are you? Something that could not happen had happened. For the Empress to speak first. On top of that, this was a place deep underground. It was a place that could never be reached unless they were ninjas, as the place had layers of safety mechanisms and an innumerable amount of camouflage. At this place, a man who wasn't a ninja had appeared. Casually, as if he came out for a walk. However, there were ninjas behind him. Ninjas? Oh. Undead. Yuka corrected herself. In the past they were ninjas, but now they were a group of undead. The man's eyes turned to Yuka for the first time. Then Yuka couldn't help but shudder once. The man drove death. The man was a Grim Reaper. Perhaps he was death itself. She had never seen such a man before. If she could fight against him, would it be similar to Wang Chunlin from the Forest of Death? Yuka believed she was the best at seeing someone's potential and their true character. And so this feeling wouldn't be a mistake. Muyang. The man spoke for the first time. I have never heard of him. No matter how much she tried, he wasn't in her memory. If it was that sort of unusual name, she would probably remember him. That meant Muyang had never participated in external activities. If that wasn't the case, there was no way for that strong of a man to just fall from the sky. What do you want? A war. Surrounding Yuka, more than 500 ninjas were in hiding. Even more, Yuka was also one of the most skilled ninjas. Even if Muyang was strong, this place was like a tiger's den. She had the confidence that she would not lose. However, what was this strange feeling? A feeling like she would instantly be devoured the moment she makes contact. But Muyang threw a dagger on the floor. Yuka's eyes widened when she saw it. How did this? Don't intervene. Itsuki, Yuka. Muyang spoke quietly. The dagger with ninjato written in Chinese characters. The dagger was an article left by the person who was called the first ninja king. If someone had this dagger, the ninjas couldn't attack the person. It was similar to the seals of the Sun Guild. Normally, Lenin had it, and so they were unable to touch him. Did you come to give this to me? Then you're stupid. You wouldn't be unaware of the fact we can't do anything to the person with the ninjato. It was right to think that the person already knew of the item if he stole it from someone else and brought it to the owner. If he really did come to give it to her, he was Na. However, Muyang seemed to be far from being Na. For what reason? Do you want to revenge against Wang Chunlin? Yuka's eyes grew wide. Wang Chunlin. How did Muyang know his name? Even within the underworld, only a few people knew of the name of the leader who ruled the Forest of Death. Yuka was among them. But she didn't know him in a good way. Revenge. Only a desire for vengeance was left towards the man who killed the first ninja king. However, this truth was also something only her and Wang Chunlin knew of. That story, who did you hear it from? There was no way Wang Chunlin would have told it himself. A person close to him. She was certain he was someone close to Wang Chunlin. Yuka gently took a step back. As soon as she were to lift her foot up, the 500 ninjas would attack Muyang at once. From the ninja king himself. What sort of nonsense? The holy city Merduden. He was trapped underground in that place. To be exact, he had trapped himself there. Yuka knitted her brows. The ninja king was killed by Wang Chunlin. Yuka saw it herself. But he said it wasn't true. It was a ridiculous story. However, Muyang's words were true. Not now, but before he returned from the past, he had seen him in the underground prison of Mulalin. The man who lived with delirium and fear of Wang Chunlin. It was truly a coincidence of finding him there. Who would have thought that he would spend time in the same cell underground when he infiltrated the place for an assassination? You are not the only one who wants revenge against Wang Chunlin. Itsuki. Yuka was a rational ninja. She was quick at calculations and didn't take risks. It was annoying if he was to become her enemy. There was also no reason to be enemies if they had a similar goal. Yuka looked into Muyang's eyes. It was to check if his vengefulness was true. And he looked like a volcano about to explode. The biggest and most violent thing in the world was being kept from exploding by the man's rationality. Using the sound transmission technique used by ataraxia, Muyang also sent one more word. Huang. Huang. It was a nickname Ninja King called Yuka when she was young. The man knew of something that only they knew of. Was the first ninja king truly alive? Yuka's body trembled lightly. If the man Muyang's words were true, she had no time to waste at this place. She needed to get to Mulalin at once. To do this, she needed to complete this trial. Clomp. As if Muyang did not need to listen to her answer, he left unconcerned. The great Yuka, who was called the Empress, couldn't help but to vacantly look at his back. Muyang made a small smile. Even if Muyang didn't make any deals with Yuka, Yuka would act to complete the trial on her own. Yuka wouldn't become a follower. The pride of the Empress was strong and she had no reason to serve a god. She would be useful as an obstacle for the Command Clan and Moon. Until she finds out the truth, she can't touch me. Muyang's strength was briefly shown and she felt it. And so, the truth only Muyang knew had made her uncomfortable. It would be the same even if he hadn't killed 50 of her ninjas. Yuka was a rational and calculating woman. She would know that it is more beneficial for her to leave Muyang alone than to fight him. Either way, the declaration of war was complete. Since he had returned the ninjato, the ninjas wouldn't bother him any longer. Attack the Fire Dragon Knights and Lenin. Swoosh. Around 50 ninjas moved with one goal. While watching them from behind, Muyang clenched his fist hard. The revenge against Wang Chunlin will only be completed by me. If he wanted to, he could have twisted the truth a bit to make Yuka attack Wang Chunlin. Since Muyang knew of all the stations created by Wang Chunlin. However, he didn't do so. He couldn't give away this revenge to anyone else. The Fire Dragon Knights and Lenin were all humans. They were humans who eat and do things. Even those who are called elites couldn't keep their sense of tension up all day. And that small carelessness took their lives away. The ninjas followed Muyang's orders and devoured the Fire Dragon Knights from the smallest parts. They were able to find out they were being attacked by someone only 2 hours later. 7 have died and 2 more are missing. Like, how is this possible? Lenin smacked the ground and grinded his teeth. Yuka, that be asterisk teeth. And he found out that the ones attacking them were ninjas. He didn't think Yuka would stab him in the back. He searched for the ninjato just in case. It was there, but it took time for him to notice it was a fake. You'd steal my item? You dare. Don't lower your guard and follow me. From now on we will subjugate the ninjas. Grind. Yuka. Lenin already found out the location she was at. Lenin's personality didn't allow him to stay put and be attacked like this. Yuka was also aware that Lenin would soon attack her. Wouldn't she have already spread her informants? Lenin was only able to see an empty basement. Then when he was about to turn around and go back, Lenin couldn't help but doubt his eyes. Like. Several hundred jiangshis appeared. There was a good mix of red jiangshis and black jiangshis. And in the middle there was a Death Knight. When the Death Knight gave his signal, the jiangshis instantly covered Lenin and the Fire Dragon Knights. Those who aren't followers. Answer with death. The Death Knight spoke. Lenin quickly tried to stop him, but he couldn't hold them back for even 10 seconds. He's strong. Exquisite swordsmanship. On top of that, quick enhanced movement. His power was strengthened by Sky Devil, and Lenin was losing the fight against this strength. Lenin could only barely block him. Gurak. See Chief. In the meantime, the Fire Dragon Knights were being disintegrated throughout. Although their numbers were also lacking, they couldn't win against the strengthened jiangshis regardless. Although the members called for the chief, Lenin couldn't reply. Lenin's head flew up in the air. Their eyes were filled with astonishment. They didn't think his life would be given up this easily. However, the Death Knight that killed Lenin was emotionless. As if he just killed a bug. He acted as if it was natural. He just quietly kneeled on the ground and prayed to the sky. Purple light shined in his 2 hollow eyes, and numerous specters became evil ghosts and clung to him. From the Sky Devil's light came down and Taken absorbed their souls. Through the grace of the Sky Devil, this faithful servant, Taken, offers death. Soon the Fire Dragon Knights were annihilated. The Luminescent Guild was considered to be one of the 9 great guilds. a place situated in the great city and also the group Kim Tae-hwan belonged to. There's evidence of a battle. Upon arriving, all that remained were countless traces of battle. However, there was not even one corpse. A strange energy. Ooh. The specters led by Mu-young cried out creepily. Similar to the specter's aura, a different kind of energy was in the surroundings. What in the world happened? Hyacinth asked with a serious expression. After Lennon and the Fire Dragon Knights had disappeared and the guild was at risk of being shaken, the Sun Guild was still intact. If it had collapsed just from that, it couldn't be called the strongest guild. The Command Clan. They attacked this place. That kind of energy was unique to none other than the Command Clan. To say the least, it meant that the Command Clan or the Sky Devil's followers had raided this place. They are continuously increasing. It was an event that couldn't be handled lightly. If a group as big as the Luminescent Guild was already defeated, it was only a matter of time before the number of people who volunteered to become the Sky Devil's followers would drastically increase. However, the ranking of the top 10 influential people had not changed. It meant that the Luminescent Guild's guild master Bahamut was alive and well. After a moment, people with search skills began to pop up and investigate the surroundings. Soon after, one of the people investigating the surroundings shouted, "I found traces of massive movement." He was a searcher who slowly scrutinized the memories of the ground. His eyes turned blue and scanned the surrounding ground like a radar. As everyone approached, he explained, "Nearly 5,000 people moved to this place. Facing southwest, to be exact." 5,000 people? By any chance were they Luminescent Guild members? The man shook his head when Hyacinth asked. "I'm not sure of that much." Even if he scanned the memories of the ground, he couldn't find out about everything. Only the approximation of the composition could be seen. Still, he had measured the movements of 5,000 people, and even as a seeker it was quite impressive. If it's southwest, isn't that where the Sky Library is? There is also the arena there. If it was the Luminescent Guild, they would have thought the same thing as us. Since Bahamut is not such a stubborn person, there is no reason to go to the Sky Library. Hyacinth tapped her forehead with her finger. It was surprising, but Hyacinth was developing day by day. The uniqueness of the battlefield and the release from repressed circumstances seemed to have produced synergistic effects. The possibility that the group headed towards the arena is the Command Clan is high. Perhaps our worries could become reality. By worries you mean? In 2 days, the Blue Temple's gates will open. Everyone is aware of that, correct? Ah. As if he had just realized, the Seeker shook his head. The same was true for Mu-young. He hadn't thought about that at all. He thought that the temple was disconnected due to becoming the Sky Devil's domain in the Sky Devil's trial. However, what if, as usual, new people came in through the gates? A massacre. The Command Clan's power would grow by that much. The Sky Devil's devotees would also be strengthened with greater rewards from hunting. However, one thing that was certain was that around this time, many people appeared and become heroes. 1 year after Mu-young's arrival, the typical hero that crossed the gate. The mountain sovereign Bombar. He, like the Dragon King, was a man who started a revolution. As long as there was the slightest chance of someone with the strength of a mountain to cross the gate, it would be a waste to let him die. "We have to go to the arena," Mu-young briefly uttered. It didn't seem like Hyacinth's thoughts differed. If this fight was prolonged, the gate associated with the Blue Temple might be the only rescue plan. The enemies continued to grow. The allies continued to decrease. Although they were weak because they just arrived, the battlefield was a shortcut where they could quickly get strong. If appropriate aid and support was given, they would rapidly develop and become a strength to them. If there came a point where they had to conduct defense tactics, there weren't as many places where it would be as easy to stop the enemy as that place. The Sky Library was also close by, so it was a good place for an attack. "Let's move to the arena." They couldn't lose that place. Mu-young didn't hide his own strength. If his adversary was a devil, he acted even crazier than it. It was the same when he fought with the command clan who had occupied the arena. Those who died were turned into Jiangshis controlled by the corpse sorcerer, and there were also a lot of the Sky Devil's followers. When combined with the 1,000 command clan members, it became approximately 5,000 people. However, they were nothing compared to the Sun Guild. Both in quality and quantity they were of no match. The Sky Devil's grace. I give this humble life to the Sky Devil. Then their choice was self-destruction. A martyr blew up his body like a bomb. As they used the geographical advantage for defensive tactics. It was quite a pain in the ass. Thus, Muyang also chose to take the bull by the horns. Thorn formation. Thorns rose from his entire body. Even though his agility decreased, it was a technique that drastically increased defensive power. It was a skill gained from hunting demon nobles. Physical resistance increased by 200 points. Magical resistance increased by 150 points. Agility reduced by 60%, 235. Actually, Muyang had a very high magical resistance. Unless they were within the top 10 humans, there weren't many people who had magical resistance exceeding 400. However, using the Thorn Formation skill, it greatly exceeded 500 and reached 600. Using most skills it was impossible to land a blow on Muyang. Physical attacks didn't work either. As it was, Muyang charged to make a path. He really isn't human. How many skills does he have? Everyone watched Muyang and their tongues wagged. If there was a battle, Muyang ran to it. The incarnation of a battle demon. A devil who is crazy about battles. The influence rating has been raised. 10th place 500 points. 9th place 1000 points. The Sky Devil has modified the rules. The scores of believers are doubled for the next 2 days. A change had occurred. The intervention of the Sky Devil. Muyang didn't think that it could even make a new rule. He's in a hurry. Muyang clicked his tongue and spread ice crystals around the surroundings. Quang, quang. The crystals soon began to vibrate and shatter. In an instant the believers were swept away. However, Muyang was fine. Magical resistance of 600. He had never had such figures before, even in the past. Although there was help from his skills, it felt like he was in a new world. As the people that had been blocking the entrance were cleared up, Muyang stopped using Thorn Formation. Feng. And he withdrew Anguish. Stop him. Muyang. If you kill Muyang you gain 1,000 points. Enemies swarmed in like moths. From the moment he lifted his foot, Muyang became a devilish killer. At the end of the battle the arena was regained. The gigantic circular arena had all kinds of defensive magic placed on it, so it wouldn't budge an inch from outside attacks. Intrusions by air required high-ranking flying skills. It was like a well-made fortress. Also, at the end of the arena, dozens of black spheres were floating around. That was the gate. It was being activated gradually and forming the shape of a door. Husband. Not long after they had reclaimed the arena, Wuhi suddenly appeared. Come to think of it, he hadn't seen Wuhi at all in the great city. And so he had completely forgotten about her. Fai fairy. It's a fairy. Oh my word. People were startled at the sight of Wuhi running in Muyang's direction. It was natural. You couldn't catch a fairy even if you wanted to. The person that a fairy chased after was usually touted as a hero. Husband, you've missed Wuhi all this while, right? So your name was Wuhi. As Muyang pretended that he didn't know her, Wuhi whined. Sheesh, even when you brush me off it's charming. But once you find out what Wuhi has learned, you will see Wuhi differently. Weren't you just playing around? I wasn't. This trial. I think it's made by a fairy. In an instant there was silence. The Sky Devil's trial. Of course he thought it was made by the Sky Devil. A fairy made it. Usually trials are made by a fairy. Also Abdulon said that the Sky Devil was not a god. Even Muyang felt as if he had taken a blow. If the Sky Devil was not a god but was a fairy, he could now understand Moon's god-making work a little. To be honest, When she enters the city, something smells very coppery. We can't stand that, you know. So she just prodded around here and there and found some fairy homes. Fairy homes. You said they were given when fairies create a trial. Yes, but they don't leave them behind. And there were no inhabitants. Huey thought it was strange. So when she searched some more, there was a house that was occupied. It was a very dangerous fairy's house. A very dangerous fairy? It was the Fairy King. Mu-young frowned. He'd heard the story of a new fairy queen, but it was his first time hearing about a king. As if she read Mu-young's mind, Wu-he explained. Not the fairy queen. A very long time ago there used to be a fairy king and he disappeared. He did something wrong, lost his dignity and fell into the void. However, why is the fairy king's house here in the first place? Doesn't something smell fishy? Wu-he shrugged her shoulders. The fairies lost their world because of the long absence of their king. And if the king in the void was summoned, he had summoned him. As the name, the void, suggested, it was a void zone. A place where the last days of those who couldn't become gods were regarded. The only existing person that could summon those that resided there was Moon. The Fairy King designed the trial and the Sky Devil aims to realize godhood. The pieces of the puzzle were coming together. Trials were originally best made by fairies, the original gods not being very elaborate. Even in the trials that were left by the Masters of Darkness and Azura, he could see their flaws. How'd I do? Wu-he did well, right? Then Wu-he cleared her throat and leaned her head closer. Mu-young raised his hands slightly. The enemy was not a god. That one belief had a great influence on everybody. The rank of influence is elevated. 9th place 1,000 points. 6th place 2,000 points. The Sky Devil has established a new rule. Targets to be eliminated are marked with a symbol of the Sky Devil. The Sky Devil's followers will instinctively try to kill the user. Will you become a devoted follower of the Sky Devil? This is a message that the Sky Devil has sent directly to the user. Becoming devoted will free you from all danger and you will be able to receive more power and rewards. Mu-young chuckled aloud. His mere suspicion that the Sky Devil was not a god made him move. Maybe it was because if everyone believed you weren't a god, you really couldn't become a god. Wu-he's opinion made the Sky Devil impatient. A guilty conscience needs no accuser. Mu-young firmly rejected it. A fierce 2-day-long battle. Surprisingly, up to 10,000 cultists, command clan members and Jiangshi assaulted the arena. As they attacked day and night without pause, every Sun Guild member had no choice but to be exhausted. However, they defended it. The Blue Temple and the connected gate were unscathed. 2 days later, when it was morning again, the gates began to activate. And people started popping out one by one. Most of them were haggard and weak. Still, they had adequate aggression left. However, they could not help but wonder when they crossed the gate and saw the Sun Guild and Mu-young. After enduring a month at the Blue Temple and crossing with such difficulty, there were a lot of people staring at them. From their time at the Blue Temple, most of them had already learned that they shouldn't trust people even from the same place. The tension increased and, suddenly one of those who had arrived suddenly stepped forward. Here I am. The great wizard Oscar has arrived. Gah! Who are you guys? Are you the enemy? If you don't step back soon, you will soon see a terrible sight. A madman had appeared. A fireball appeared in the hand of the madman. A spear of ice formed in his other hand. Amazing, except for the fact that he is a bit weird. Hyacinth said. He was handling skills of 2 different elements at the same time. A novice who had just come out of the Blue Temple. If another guild or clan saw this scene, all of them would be eyeing him. He seemed crazy, but where in the underworld was personality important? More than that, in this place strength and potential ranked far higher. Merlin's best pupil. Who can stop me, the great wizard Oscar? If you don't get lost immediately. Kiok. Young seized the madman by the head. It happened in a flash. This guy really wants to die. Let go. The madman threw the ice spear and the fireball in Young's face. Young didn't even try to avoid it. The skill burst with a great bang sound, but Young was unscathed. There was not even a mark. The madman's eyes widened. He couldn't believe it. Oh, how did you get hit by my spell and remain unscathed? So you are the devil. Did you say Merlin? Don't say his name without permission, you devil. The madman seemed to have already classified Young as a devil. No matter how good of a beginner he was, in the end he was still a beginner. It was also absurd to think that a beginner could hurt Young, who was already classified within the strongest rank. Young looked around the surroundings. The gate that the madman had passed through was crowded. Most of the people had made it through. Seeing that, it seemed that he might be mad, but he wasn't a villain. Merlin. However, more than that, the thing that surprised Young was Merlin's name. When he heard the name, Young's mind sparked. The great wizard of the Blue Temple. The real wizard that had grabbed the ankles of 3 demon gods in the past was Merlin. The battle back then had been fierce enough to shake the underworld. Originally, Merlin had tried to make Young his disciple, but Young had rejected him. So he had a new disciple? Young's eyes turned to the madman for the second time.